Rumors suggest Disney CEO Bob Iger is struggling with how to handle the Snow White live-action remake after its trailer became one of the most disliked in history. Reports claim the studio is scrambling to rework parts of the film, cutting scenes they fear fans will reject. But is that enough? Apparently not. Insiders say Iger himself is frustrated and uncertain about the direction the production team is taking.
Its left-wing policies hurt shareholders. In new SEC filing, Disney is now admitting that it's been slapped by its own customers for its far-left social and political agenda.
Given the rough year Disney has had, CEO Bob Iger is likely counting down the days to 2025. The company's troubles only escalated in 2023 and 2024, but the real issue started when they began turning classic stories into live-action films, reshaping them to fit their own vision of diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, instead of celebrating inclusivity, critics argue it felt more like an attack on traditional storytelling, particularly against white male characters. The result? A complete disaster. Iger has seemingly spent more time putting out fires than steering the company forward. And it wasn't just one or two flops. It was failure after failure, almost as if Disney had turned losing money into an art form. The worst part? It all happened during Disney's 100th anniversary, a milestone that should have been a grand celebration, but instead became one of the darkest chapters in the company's history.
March of 2022, $254 billion, a decline of, Vinny, you ready? They lost $196 billion in 1 year.
What?
$196 billion, a 56% drop-off.
As if things weren't bad enough, Snow White 2025 is shaping up to be an even bigger disaster. Honestly, it's almost impressive how badly this project is going. 5 failed test screenings. 5. That's not just a red flag. It's a giant neon sign flashing abort mission. Yet, Disney keeps doubling down, desperately trying to salvage what's left of this sinking ship. Between public backlash, ongoing boycotts, and behind-the-scenes drama with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, this movie has chaos written all over it. But the issue isn't just Snow White. It's Disney's relentless push for diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that feels more performative than genuine. Inclusivity should be natural, not forced, but Disney's approach seems to be alienating longtime fans rather than uniting audiences. Instead of celebrating diversity, they've turned it into a battleground, labeling anyone who disagrees as a villain. And speaking of frustration, Bob Iger is reportedly losing it behind the scenes, panicked, scrambling, and doing whatever he can to keep the company afloat. But let's be real, damage control has never been his strong suit. Remember when he brushed off backlash, saying they'd just quiet the noise? That aged poorly. Fast forward 8 months, and Snow White is still blowing up in his face. Iger's grand solution? Keep doubling down on DEI as if it's some magic fix. Spoiler alert, it's not. In a recent statement, he even called the FI, boycotts, insulting and inflammatory, claiming critics are just a vocal minority who don't understand Disney's vision for an inclusive future. But here's the thing. If that were true, why are Disney's movies flopping left and right? Why is Snow White facing massive pushback? Maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't the audience. Maybe it's the product.
How much money did Disney lose? Then what did it say? 200 how much? Because what? They're having a problem with their content because the people that you're talking about, us against them, we're not buying that.
Let's not forget the CGI dwarfs. Oh, the dwarfs. Who thought this was a good idea? They look cheap, lifeless, and downright embarrassing for a company with Disney's resources. Instead of casting real actors, Disney went all in on this uninspired mess, and it feels like a game-over moment. There was no effort to make anything special, just a lazy approach that fans immediately noticed. And with that, Disney alienated the very audience that had kept Snow White's legacy alive since the 1930s. Everything about this production has been a PR nightmare. The irony? Bob Iger is supposedly gearing up to retire in 2026, trying to secure his legacy. But at this rate, his legacy will be remembered as the CEO who ran Disney into the ground. It's almost sad to watch. Almost. But then you remember the tone-deaf decisions, the constant doubling down on bad ideas, and suddenly, it's hard to feel sorry for him. The situation has gotten so dire that even Disney's board of directors is reportedly losing patience. Some members are even pushing for Snow White to skip theaters entirely and go straight to Disney+, which honestly might be the best move at this point. Sure, it won't save the film from disaster, but at least it could soften the blow. The real problem? Iger's ego won't let that happen. He's determined to prove the doubters wrong, even if it means dragging the company through the mud in the process.
First, I'll say, is any of it Bob Iger's fault? Of course it is. Right, but Bob Iger wasn't uninvolved in setting the stage for what was going to come after him. You know, you're not Bob Iger and then shocked and dismayed to figure out who they replace you with.
The interesting thing is, Disney's problems don't stop with Snow White. This crisis isn't just about one movie, it's about the company's entire approach to filmmaking. Fans feel like Disney has completely lost sight of what made it special in the first place. Instead of focusing on great storytelling and timeless characters, they're more obsessed with pushing certain narratives. And let's be honest, it's not working. The audience sees right through it, and they're not buying what Disney's selling. Literally. The solution? It's not simple. But if Disney wants to turn things around, they need to stop pretending. Everything is fine when it's clearly not. They should own their mistakes, listen to the fans, and get back to making quality content. But knowing Disney, they'll likely double down, blame the audience, and then act shocked when things don't improve. At this rate, 2025 is shaping up to be no different than 2023 or 2024. Disney's stubbornness is why some investors are now accusing the company of sabotaging itself with what they call a political agenda. The biggest issue? Disney has strayed so far from its family-friendly roots that it's alienating its core audience, while dragging its own shareholders down with it.
I have to tell you, I don't know anything really about the law, but if I were a shareholder, I would want a class action suit against Bob Iger because Bob is the reason it started.
The latest drama revolves around a 50-page letter from Reed Rubenstein, a former Department of Justice official and now Senior VP at America First Legal, AFL. Rubenstein claims Disney's programming is pushing anti-police and anti-white narratives, and that their so-called virtue signaling is backfiring spectacularly. Want some numbers? Since February 2021, Disney's market cap has nosedived nearly 40%, plummeting from $341 billion to just $207 billion. To put that in perspective, that's like watching a mansion shrink into a tiny fixer-upper. Rubenstein specifically called out certain Disney shows for allegedly promoting a woke agenda. One such program reportedly tells kids that racism in the world affects me and you, emphasizing skin color as a defining trait. The issue, according to critics, isn't discussing racism. It's how Disney is handling it. Instead of educating, they argue it feels more like indoctrination. Then there's the Muppet Babies controversy. Remember Gonzo, the quirky, offbeat character? In one episode, Gonzo wore a dress and went by Gonzorella, a move Rubenstein claims is less about acceptance and more about pushing an agenda. Sure, Gonzo has always been eccentric, but this particular storyline raised eyebrows. And Marvel? Not off the hook. Rubenstein's letter points to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, highlighting a scene where police fire tear gas at peaceful protesters. He argues moments like this fuel the narrative that law enforcement is inherently bad, further alienating Disney's non-left-leaning viewers. With all these controversies stacking up, it's clear Disney's biggest battle isn't just at the box office, it's with the very audience they once captivated.
Your audience telling, we're going to tell our story. No, you are here to tell the story that our audiences want to hear.
According to AFL, Disney needs to abandon its progressive agenda and return to its roots. Gene Hamilton, AFL's executive director, argues that Disney has been pandering to an activist movement that's never satisfied, one that has dragged the brand far from its original magic. Instead of delivering timeless stories with universal appeal, Disney is now producing content that feels more like a lecture than entertainment. What do you think about Disney's direction and Bob Iger's push for a woke agenda? How do you feel about the audience's reaction? Share your thoughts in the comments below, And don't forget to subscribe for more videos on the Disney backlash. See you in the next one.